Our final screencast on population is to do with migration within Europe. Europe currently receives over 2 million immigrants from beyond its borders a year. That's more than any other world region. So in other words, more than 2 million people are trying to get into the EU. The ratio between current population and immigrants is higher for Europe than for the USA. European population is changing more in age and racial structure due to immigration than by changes in birth and death rates. About 9.4% of the EU's people are foreign born, compared with 10.3% in the USA and almost 25% in Australia. The range of countries around the world from which migrants to Europe come has changed. Africa and Asia are the major sources of immigrants, but not the same regions as previously. There's also migration within the EU. There are two categories of migrants within the EU: those moving between countries and those coming in from beyond the borders. Wealthier countries usually receive immigrants searching for work and a better lifestyle. Poland and other Eastern European countries joined the EU in 2004, and since that date many people have moved temporarily or permanently to the UK, like we learned about in our last lesson, and other Western EU countries for work. So a lot of migration to the EU is due to labour. It's people coming looking for jobs. Cheaper travel and more information attracts skilled and unskilled labour to Europe. Many EU residents would like the flow of migration to reduce, but actually the United Nations are predicting that immigration into the EU is actually going to rise by 40% over 40 years. Immigration, as we know in the UK, is a subject of political debate across all EU countries. Spain's immigrant population grew by 400% in 10 years in the early 21st century. Italy expects 100,000 Romanians in the years following Romania's joining of the EU. And this tends to what happens. So as new countries join the EU, those people are then free to move between countries. So in Italy, for example, Romania wants to join the EU, 100,000 of them are expected to go to Italy. Italy, of course, or a lot of people in Italy aren't happy about that, even though there is a need for workers. Now, Europe needs immigrants because of its fallen birth rate and the resulting lack of workers. Remember when we did the demographic transition model? A lot of European countries, particularly those Eastern European countries, are having a fallen birth rate below the death rate, so their population is in decline. Highly skilled workers often come to the EU to take temporary jobs in areas of shortage such as teaching, nursing and high-tech computer jobs. About 20% are graduates. Nevertheless, many people see immigrants as a problem rather than an opportunity. Now this graph shows you the percentage of the total population. So Germany here has 8.8% of its population are actually foreign citizens. As we can see in the UK has 6.6% of its population who are foreign, and it goes all the way down here into the Netherlands. Now this data was taken in 2009. For the UK, which is starred here, and Belgium starred there, it was actually in 2008. As always, we need to know a case study of international labour migration to the EU, and we're going to choose Senegal to Italy. Now, Senegalese children love football and support home teams, but many also support Lazio, AS Parma and other Italian teams. The reason for this is that many of these children's fathers and brothers already work in Italy. Patterns of emigration from Senegal are well established and many young men are keen to work in Italy. The reason why opportunities are limited in Senegal, where many people are subsistence farmers, that means they farm for themselves and their family. They only grow enough stuff for themselves and their family. So they're not making enough money to kind of sell their products and make a profit. With limited services and high rates of urban unemployment, so unemployment in the town and cities, young men are keen to emigrate to the EU to find work. Money is often sent home to support children's education so that the child can go to school in Senegal or improve their living conditions. For example, in the villages of Bude forage money has been used to set up water and electricity supplies. This photograph here is showing us the many Senegalese fishing villages that have been abandoned due to the fact that these people are moving to the EU to find other forms of work. Now, so far, our case studies looking at migration, both Polish people to the UK and Senegalese people to Italy, has been a voluntary type of migration due to the fact that people are wanting to go there to get work. A series of push factors from their own places, pull factors to the places they're going to. However, some people are forced to move. Asylum seekers are people who believe that their lives are at risk if they remain in their home country and who seek to settle in another, what they believe to be a safe country. These people become refugees when they settle in another country. 1/3 of EU immigrants claim to be asylum seekers. Since EU countries have reduced the number of EU migrants, they would allow in some economic migrants who claim to be asylum seekers, believing this would give them a better chance of being allowed to stay in the EU. Unfortunately, this has sometimes caused strong feelings against genuine asylum seekers. So in other words, some people are kind of lying and saying they're asylum seekers, that they have to leave their country because they don't feel safe, when actually they're not. They're just, as we call, economic migrants. They're looking for work and to make money. Despite being criticised by the United Nations for not taking enough genuine refugees, the EU has a good record of accepting those displaced by war. The 1990s Bosnian War produced hundreds of thousands of refugees to the EU. Germany alone took 400,000, many of whom returned home once the situation was peaceful. Today, the wars of Iraq and Afghanistan provide most asylum claims. 2 million Iraqis have already left the country, some for neighbouring countries and some to the EU. Another 1.8 million refugees live away from their homes in Iraq, and many feel sufficiently threatened to want to leave. Sweden is particularly generous to asylum seekers, as you can see in this diagram here, with 31,820 applications. Now, by 2007, 70,000 Iraqis already lived there, half of those coming to the EU. The Netherlands, Germany, Greece, Belgium and the UK have given homes to most of the rest, so the other 70,000. With the Iraq war coming to an end, asylum requests to EU countries from Iraqis has decreased from 19,176 in 2010, from a peak of 38,286 in 2007, so it's dropped, as you can see, by nearly 20,000. Afghans, on the other hand, are now the largest group seeking refuge in the EU, with 22,939 asylum requests in 2010. Obviously, the war was a major push factor in people leaving Afghanistan, but other things such as drought, poverty, corruption and a lack of jobs led people to leave their homes. A lot of them went to the neighbouring countries of Pakistan and Iran, but many tried to get all the way across here to the UK. However, it was a very difficult journey, and a lot of them ended up in what was called the jungle. The jungle grew up on wasteland on the edge of Calais in northern France, up here, right where kind of you get the ferry across to the UK. It was a makeshift, unsanitary settlement of homemade tents and shacks. In August 2009, between 700 and 800 Afghans were living there, waiting for a chance to get to the UK, either to be smuggled in or to stow away on lorries or trains. Many of the Afghans said they didn't feel safe in France, but felt that England was a good and safe country for refugees. Early on the 22nd of September 2009, the remaining migrants were arrested. Within 24 hours, the settlement was actually bulldozed. Many people hoped that the migrants would be allowed to stay in France or be sent home. However, most of them were just released, so they returned to northern France and kept trying to get into the UK. So, we need to know about voluntary migration case studies, which we've done in Poland. Our 2 case studies into the EU are Senegal into Italy, and our Afghan refugees who are an example of asylum seekers.